If you have ever found yourself replaying something you said way too many times, or beating yourself up over that one thing that you forgot again, welcome to the ADHD shame spiral. It is exhausting, it's relentless, and it makes everything harder. But today we're breaking it down. Why does ADHD make us more prone to guilt and shame? And, most importantly, how do we stop the spiral before it takes over? Let's talk about it. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Nostalgic Neurodivergent, where we talk all things ADHD, parenting, and life, served with a side of nerdy Zengal energy. I'm Corey, and today we're diving into a topic that so many of us ADHDers struggle with: guilt, shame, and the never ending mental spiral. So, if you've ever felt like you just can't get it together, if past mistakes haunt you more than they should, if you're constantly apologizing for just existing, this episode is for you. ADHD and shame go hand in hand, but it doesn't have to be that way. In this episode, we'll cover the science behind why ADHD makes us more prone to guilt and shame, how rejection sensitivity fuels that shame spiral, why past trauma and conditioning makes it worse, and practical ADHD friendly strategies to break the cycle. So, why does ADHD make us more prone to guilt and shame? Shame isn't just feeling bad, it's a deep internalized belief that you are the problem. And ADHDers, we get hard hit with it. ADHD affects executive function, memory, impulse control, time management. So we forget things, miss deadlines, interrupt people. Cue the shame. And when ADHDers feel even a hint of criticism, it hits like a freight train because of that good old rejection sensitive dysphoria. So we don't just feel bad, we feel unworthy. Growing up, we were often hearing, "Why can't you just focus? You never listen. You're so irresponsible," which turns into, "I'm broken." It doesn't help that we keep hearing this as adults. So if you remember those report card comments, "So smart but doesn't apply herself," turns out they weren't really helpful. They were just planting the shame spiral seeds at an early age. Many of us, though, we didn't just struggle with ADHD, we grew up in homes, schools, or workplaces that reinforced the idea that we were too much or not enough. And here's how that might have played out. We start with our parental expectations. We may have had strict or critical parents, which in turn leads us to internalized perfectionism. We may have school trauma, where we were getting called out by our teachers for missing assignments and the constant "try harder" message. In the workplace, we may struggle with chronic procrastination, job hopping, or just being labeled as lazy. And let's talk about the masking. We're overcompensating, people pleasing, and pretending to have it together until we don't. Raise your hand, as long as you're not driving, if you still think about the one embarrassing moment from 1997. Yep, same here. And for me, the shame spiral started young because my mom used to tell me, "If you would just apply yourself." And believe me, I wanted to. But I would still procrastinate until the last minute on just about everything. So even when I had weeks to write a paper in high school, I would wait until the final night. And yet, I still got good grades. So I had zero motivation to change that. Fast forward to when I was getting my associate's degree, and I still procrastinated because, I'll be honest, that's what I do. But I finished my 2 years with a 3.97 GPA. Almost perfect, except for science getting the best of me. I graduated with highest honors, earned a spot in the International Honor Society, and I had full scholarship offers for my bachelor's degree. And then the following year, when I gave my speech at the Honor Society induction ceremony for the next incoming class, I said it. My mom always told me to apply myself, and it turns out She was right. But it wasn't about working harder. It was about working with my ADHD brain and not against it. Mind you, this is before I got my diagnosis. So now that we know why ADHD fuels shame, how do we start breaking those cycles? Number one, we need to recognize the shame lie. You're not failing, you're navigating a brain that functions differently. Number two, we need to interrupt the spiral. So we use pattern disruptors, movement, music, a literal verbal stop when we're spiraling. We practice self compassion over self punishment. So we start talking to yourself like a friend would. Would you call them a failure? And number four, we build systems that work for our brains. So instead of trying to just be better, we make our environments work for us. So think of it like one of those 90s mixtapes. Some tracks, the negative self talk, have to go, while others, the self compassion and realistic strategies, stay on repeat. So, reality check. Here's the elephant in the room: shame thrives in silence. ADHDers are conditioned to just try harder when the real issue is how we're trying. We don't need to fix ourselves, we need to build a life that works for us. Your brain is not broken. Your strategies just need a reboot. Don't forget to grab my free imposter syndrome guide because it is packed with scripts and tools to stop the shame spiral in its tracks. So just remember, shame is not proof that you're failing. It's proof that you've been conditioned to believe you're not enough. But you are. If this episode hit home, share it with a fellow ADHD friend who needs to hear it. And don't forget to grab your free imposter syndrome guide. The link is in the show notes, and I will talk to you again soon.